Hello YouTube, and welcome to the first actual installment of Community Mercenary tanks. The previous video was merely an introduction to the idea with a plethora of examples provided by my Discord, and they've made more since then for you guys to check out. I've picked out 3 tank ideas from your suggestions and tried my best to bring them to life and flesh them out, although I won't go over every stat for them all, such as view range, as that'll just come from the turret choice, and the tank class could determine things like camo factors and such, so I've left some things out. But if you'd like to see some of your own ideas created, just leave them below or in the corresponding channel on Discord. We'll start with this one that was suggested really early on, that being the KV Lee. This image was posted in my Discord with others of the same vein, but I chose this one specifically as I thought it would be the most interesting to work with, especially since now we have the multi-turret system in the game to allow the hull and turret guns to both be usable. However, I wanted to make some extra changes from this design because I didn't just want another KV2 gun at tier 6 with extra firepower, so I'm going to give it the stock KV2 turret at tier 5. Dropping to tier 5 means I'm not going to give it the 152mm gun for what I would hope are obvious reasons. I feel it would be way too strong with the multi-turret system, so it also gets its stock 122mm from the KV2. The hull-mounted gun will be the upgraded 75mm that the M3 Lee gets. And that's all the picture gives us. So about its speed, I'll say the same top speed at 38, but we'll have a power to weight of around 11.5 to 12.5, and even then, it'll probably need an engine upgrade for the increased weight from the KV2 parts. And with all that, I think we need a name for this tier 5 heavy tank. I like thinking that it'll have some stopping power that'll scare tanks from pushing it even if they had an advantage, so I named it appropriately. Introducing the Obstacle. I know it looks a little anticlimactic looking, but hey, I tried to spice things up, and let's just say that my artistic skills stopped at the creation of the tank. I couldn't take it much further into something that I thought looked cool and interesting, so I'll just leave that up to the pros. I think this tank would be quite powerful, but not too powerful, as it's quite tall, which means the 122mm might have trouble finding shots up close with its 5 degrees of gun depression, but it has 2 guns. Having what is essentially a derp gun with a reliable gun is quite novel and might work well, so I'm going to say that I think this tank would be popular for its imposing look and mix mash of already well-known tanks, and perform quite like the TOG, and that it'd be very easy to do bad in, but many players will make it work nonetheless. Although it'd probably not have the HP of the TOG, I'm thinking more average tier 5 heavy HP with 660 to 680. Next, we'll jump from tier 5 all the way up to tier 10. This suggestion was a comment left on the first video. Zach here gave me some options, and even then I still took a liberty that I hope is understood. From the turret choice, I chose the 260, as I really didn't want another IS-7 turret in the game, so it was a no-brainer. The gun we'll get back to in a second, let's choose the hull first. The T95E2 medium hull has been used in a mercenary tank already, and I felt this was going for more of a heavy kind of vibe, so I ruled that one out. The other 2 options were quite compelling and similar, but I felt the WZ-111-5A fit what I was feeling for this tank much more, so that's why I chose that one. Now, that gun. It's a similar situation to the whole choice that I ruled out, in that the Chieftain's 122mm is already on the chisel, and I felt the 400 alpha version on a tank that looks like this didn't fit. So I found another 120mm from a British tank that does fit, the Valors, which does 440 alpha. I think the speed and power to weight of 50 and 15 respectively from the WZ-111-5A's hull is fine to stay. Whether it'll need an engine change for possible weight changes is unknown to me, but if so, then it'll get an engine change too. And the name. I couldn't think of something clever, so I'll just name it after the creator, Guenther. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I didn't. I think this tank would do quite well. You have the firepower of a Valor, but the drawback of less gun depression, but made up slightly with more speed and maneuverability, and 2300 HP. Overall, a solid tank that would perform well enough while being another tier 10 mercenary heavy tank. Moving on, I saved the best for last. Here we have an Era 3 Mercenary tank that'll take advantage of its small size, big gun, and multiple weapon systems with many missiles to boot. Here is the TKS 20 millimeter? Uh, wait. Okay, in all seriousness, I really did save the best for last. Another one suggested early on in Discord by Kellen. It was made already and made an appearance in the montage in the first video. Again, if you haven't seen the first video, you should really check it out. But I loved this idea so much that I had to include it here. It takes the body of a T10, gives it 1200 horsepower engine of the IS-7, which is just a ridiculous amount of horsepower, lowers the weight by slapping a Sheridan turret on it with the gun of an SDRV-103B. Like, how cool is that? Enough said, right? Let's just see it. Now, the gun isn't exactly the same, but it gets the point across. I just love this so much because as the first tier 10 tank destroyer, it would take the fixed gun of the Sturv and give it a turret. It'd be insanely fast, and I'd presume it would be quite stealthy as well, having 420 meters base view range. But where's the downsides? Well, I don't know exactly. Maybe gun handling would be subpar because of the fact that the Sturv gun was so incorporated to its original chassis that putting it in a turret would yield different results? I'm not sure. As a TD, the last thing I think it needs is worse gun handling. It wouldn't be able to run vert stabs, or would it? I don't know. It's a heavy tank hull with Light's turret. Maybe it would. Maybe just the fact that it's a 400 alpha gun rather than a needlessly added 950 alpha 152mm. Looking at you, tank that should have stayed in Color. But it'd have reload and DPM to go with it. It'd be a powerhouse for sure. Maybe a little overkill, but man do I love the idea. I'd hesitate to bring this into the game as is, but maybe an engine change would go a long way. Because in a world where all these big alpha TDs reign supreme, it wouldn't be that bad of a thing to introduce more that hit mildly. Oh, and its name? Well, we'll just name it again after its creator, Kellen. And that wraps up the first showing of Community Mercenary tanks. I really enjoyed reading and making your suggestions, going through all the intricacies of the tanks, and trying my best to put the most complete idea I could of them together to give them a sense of believability. Who knows, maybe one day we'll get one of these added, but until then, keep suggesting, keep thinking, and keep tanking. I'll see you guys in the next one.